Hello everybody, welcome back to the Mandy Margaret page and happy Pride Month. For those of you that don't know, June is Pride Month to commemorate the Stonewall Riots that occurred in June of 1969, and it's celebrated in countless ways, from music festivals, pride parades, community events, and all sorts of things. So if you start seeing those happening in your neighborhood, that is why. If you don't know anything about that, I do encourage you to read up on the history so that you understand why people celebrate and that it's not just a fun day for everybody, but also have a lot of fun. If you go to Pride, be safe, make friends, support everybody. So as a longtime ally, I decided I wanted to make a video talking about Pride Month, acknowledging it, but before I even began doing that, I realized that in order to do that, I had to listen to a community. I am one of those people that really strongly believes if you're going to be supportive of a community, you have to ask them what they need. You can't just assume. Taking somebody's voice away, even with good intentions, is just as bad as trying to take away their voice on purpose. So I encourage people to think about that. And one of the answers that I got actually said something about that. So when we get into that, I will make sure to read it. So I'm going to be reading from my computer a little bit today. The reason for that is that these were things that were sent to me. Thank you to everybody that was willing to answer these. It ended up being 3 questions. Thank you to everybody that sent me a response. I'm very grateful to have heard from you, and your perspective really matters to me and your experience matters to me. So thank you for that. So the 3 questions that I sent were, what is one thing that friends and straight allies can do to support their LGBT plus peers this month? What is one thing you would want them to understand? And what is something you wish people would realize or stop doing as it pertains to this community? So I got a lot of different responses. I'm going to read through all of them. I might say something here and there about it, but ultimately I just wanted to share these things as Pride Month begins so that people who want to be allies and maybe don't know how to support their friends can have a little bit of perspective and hear what the community actually says they need from you. I'm actually going to read the ones on my phone first because those are the ones right in front of me. So something that I wish people understood is that coming out is really hard. Sometimes it's hard knowing that there's people out there that don't love you simply because of who you love. And then I have to just click to the other one. Sorry, guys. Okay. One thing people of any orientation can do to show support for the LGBTQI plus community is to get informed of our past and current struggles. And this person sent me a quote, "Education is the greatest weapon against ignorance." And it says that's from Dr. J.P. Chia? Not sure, because I have not read it. Passive observance is not support. Support is being willing to join the fight for equality, civil rights, and basic respect. These are the same things that this community has been fighting for over 50 years. We as a community have come a long way from the Stonewall Riots. But we still have a long way to go, and our battle isn't over. Members of the community still are being neglected and abused. While one of our people are not treated equal, no one is enough. While I respect representation in mainstream media, this is actually something I was going to comment on, so thank you to this person for sending this. I wish our people were not always just a stereotype. Our community is made up of amazing individuals with unique gifts, talents, and lives. I wish that was focused on more than the comedy of being the gay best friend. So I had gone to a conference, and this was one of the things that I knew I wanted to add if nobody said it to me. So we know that when we watch specifically, I always, when I go to say comedic, say comedic. Specifically, we know when we watch comedic shows that everything is a lot of the time very stereotypical. They depend on stereotypes to make a joke a lot of the time. And if you watch a lot of shows, even when there is representation, we do tend to never let that person be the protagonist. They do tend to always be here's the protagonist and here's their gay best friend. Here's the protagonist and here's their best girlfriend that is coping with being in love with their best friend or something like that. And I feel like that's the narrative a lot of the time. And I think it is important to recognize that people are more than just their sexual identity. People are more than just their gender expression. People are more than just one piece of themselves. So to rely on that as a character, I think, is very stereotypical. But thank you to the person who added that. And again, thank you to everybody who sent these. All right. While it is great to show support by doing things like wearing pride colors and going to pride parades as allies, one of the best things people can do to help us is to use their privilege in our favor, to protect us and stand up for us when we can't, and or to make us stronger. As much as this is vague, it more or less has to be so allies can make their own interpretations, but it comes down to one thing, more or less. I did combine a couple of these because I got similar answers, so this is one that I heard from a lot of people. Listen more, stop making assumptions, talk about issues if they're willing to, and learn. Keep an open mind. And kind of in that same vein, just because you love and care about the community or an individual in the community doesn't mean you're going to know the entire picture. So this is an important thing to remember. One of the things that when I was learning about the prejudice in the LGBT community that somebody had mentioned was that it's very difficult in the modern world to be constantly up to date because this is a movement that is growing and changing all the time. There was a time where we didn't have the same letters that we have now. You might notice as I go through that some people sent me LGBT, some people sent me LGBTQ, some people sent LGBTQI, somebody sent LGBTQIA, and then some people just do LGBT plus. So to even recognize that within the community, there's still a lot of growth. So there's always this room for learning, I think is really important. Listen to an individual story as opposed to saying it's a phase or trying to relate by saying I have a gay this or gay that. So try not to say, oh, I have a gay friend, I totally know what you're going through, or something like that. Friends and straight allies can support their LGBTQ plus community by understanding that the community still faces many forms of discrimination everywhere that they go. We do have this common misconception that, and I guess it depends where you live in the world as well, but that just because the movement has come a long way doesn't mean that this isn't a fear for a lot of people. It doesn't mean that there aren't a lot of issues that still need to be discussed. And I don't want to talk too much about that because they'll come in as we go. But I wish people would stop freaking out, apologizing, or overreacting when they get a name change incorrect. I'm tired of hearing, oh my God, I'm so sorry, I'm just not used to it yet, rather than just a quick correction. This was a habit of mine for a while when my friends or somebody in my life would be transitioning and their old name would slip out, or their birth name, I should say, or I would use the wrong pronoun or something like that. And again, I understand this probably comes from a place of good intent. It probably comes from a place where you want to say to this person, I respect you and I acknowledge you and I can't believe I just did this, but you're also drawing a lot of attention to it, where we could just be able to say, I'm so sorry about that, I'll get it, I'll do better, I'll try harder next time, and then actually try harder. All right, let's scroll a little bit. These two I thought also went together a lot. One thing that I wish people would understand is that the existing laws are not always protecting the LGBT population. And something somebody else said about how to support in that respect is to vote in local, state, and federal elections, and to be researching politicians' stances on issues pertaining to this community, and actually every issue that affects all humans, but especially vulnerable groups like women, disabled rights, people of color, immigrants, economic and social policies, healthcare, education, etc. Educating other allies on what being LGBTQ plus is, and to ask and use preferred pronouns for every person that you meet. Don't act like you know everything about a group of people. People are evolving and we always need to learn and grow. I wish people would stop coming to Pride events or parades if they are not supporting the LGBTQ plus community completely. Straight allies should not be going there just for their own pleasure. They should be going to support everyone in the LGBT community. Stop glamorizing being LGBTQ+. Work on understanding and accepting all forms of LGBTQ, not just those that are gay or bisexual, but all forms. It doesn't make us cool, fashionable, or trendy to be part of this community. It is solely about our gender identity and or sexual orientation. And we do not need to be fetishized solely based on our appearances, our hair, our clothes, our style. There are many people that still cannot dress or look the way they want to, especially those who are trans or gender nonconforming or non-binary folks. Many people do still die for looking a certain way, especially those of color. I wish more people would understand that no one is raised to be different. They're born that way. No TV or information they gain through life can change who they were or are on the inside. I wish people would realize we are still people too, and we all deserve the same rights and care as heterosexual individuals. This, I heard a lot of people say that. The two biggest ones I heard was, I wish people would listen, and I wish that people would understand we're deserving of our rights. And that breaks my heart when I hear that, because the fact that somebody feels like they need to ask to be cared about, or they need to ask for basic human rights, we should really recognize that that's a problem. And hearing from these people, as much as I do live in an area that is more open, which is not to say that it's perfect, but because of the world that I grew up in, sometimes I'll admit I even forget how bad it can be for others. So this was an important thing for me as well. Sorry for the side note. One thing I want everyone to understand, realize, or stop doing, and only because I've dealt with it a lot lately, is that just because we are interested in the same sex does not mean that every person of the same sex is someone that we would want to be in a monogamous relationship with. Just like when dating the opposite sex, you don't want to date all of them. We love hard just like everyone else, and relationship preference does not define anyone. The most supportive thing you can do is to listen to your queer friends. You don't get to decide what is or isn't supportive. Specifically during parades and festivals, don't be staring, but also never to take a picture of somebody without their consent, regardless of how dressed up they are, because you may be outing people. I will admit I did not ever consider that. I wish people would realize that all identities are valid and are not made up. This I heard multiple people say, that, and this was interesting because I actually had never heard that this was a thing, but please stop equating the word cis as a slur. It isn't. So somebody else had said something about how people that are cisgender, for those of you that don't know, cisgender means that the gender that you were assigned at birth matches your identity, and heterosexual, that there's this idea that the phrase cis is actually offensive, when it's really just an identifying term. And from my understanding, feel free to correct me in the comments, the reason that cisgender was created, the term itself created, was because when we only had a term for people who were trans, or when we only had terms for people that were not born and identified as the same, that it ended up othering people, creating this space where you were identified as, nope, you are something different, you are other, and in that can also become less than a lot. So that was interesting to me, that apparently that's something where the cisgender population in a certain scope has taken this term as a slur, but also has then taken offense to a lot of things, and that people are frustrated that they're trying to treat that like oppression. And again, if you look into the history, there's a huge difference between that and the oppression that people have faced for these things. So it was interesting because I had actually never heard that before. Friends and straight allies can call out bigotry and microaggressions from their family members and other peers. It shouldn't be brushed off or normalized, even if it's coming from someone close to us, especially if it's coming from someone close to us. Continue to use the correct pronouns even if we aren't around. It's okay if you mess up sometimes, but correct yourself in those times, and continue to include us in any LGBTQ+ discussions. By this, I mean recognize when you aren't in a position to speak on a certain topic because you haven't had certain experiences. I had mentioned this I didn't really mention this specifically, but I mentioned before that this month you're going to see a lot of companies that are going to have rainbow everything coming out because it's Pride Month, and ultimately because it's profitable. And this is an important thing to remember. Corporations slapping rainbows on their logo does not mean that they are supportive of the LGBTQ+ population. So it's an important thing to remember that with any company, just because they put a slogan or something on it doesn't necessarily mean that they're supportive and welcoming to the community that they're representing. Understand that sexuality comes in all shapes and forms, and trying to paint it into set terms is not really understanding the true nature of non-generic sexuality. Stop stereotyping or preconceived conceptions that because you are this way, you must do or follow certain criteria. And again, that kind of goes back to what we talked about before, where people don't get to be the main character, they always have to be the gay best friend. We have these certain niches that we expect that this community is falling into, which it's not. It's a community of countless people, so there's no way to fit them all into one box. One thing I want allies to understand is that we very much appreciate every effort made for our parts. A big one pertains to our preferred pronouns. I cannot speak on their behalf. I know that those who change their pronouns don't care much if someone doesn't always get them right at first, as long as they're making the conscious effort to get it right. I wish people would realize two major things. One being that people can either have zero sex drive whatsoever or be attracted to any and all sexes, etc., and it doesn't make them any less normal or less of a person or confused or any of that. We do not shove our propaganda, agenda, etc. down others' throats or try to change others' sexualities. We need to spread awareness of our past, present, and futures. That is one of our main goals. The word gay is not derogatory and should not be used as an insult. Right, and this is the last one for this list. Friends or allies can donate to LGBTQ+ organizations so the community is being showed that they're actually being supported. Sharing a video on Facebook is cool and all, but it's not enough. So the reason that I saved that one for last is because for all of June, all of the Mandy Margaret t-shirt sales, 50% of my proceeds will be going to an LGBTQ+ organization known as the Trevor Project. Hello everybody, and if you've made it to this point in the video, first and foremost, thank you for watching. So originally when I was planning this video, I had gotten a bunch of answers and I was going to stop the video at that last point. That's why I say, oh, this is getting to the end of them. But after that, what had happened was I checked my inbox and I had a couple extra messages. So I decided to wait a few more days, collect the rest of the messages, and continue with this and make sure I got in as many perspectives as possible for this video. So with that being said, these are going to be answers to the same 3 questions that were mentioned previously, and they are all from, like I mentioned, my personal page, but also from the Mandy Margaret Facebook and Instagram. So thank you again to everybody who sent these answers, but let's keep going with the Pride video. I know it's a little odd because I am in a different place now, and I was going to try to just get in the same outfit and get at the same place and figure that out, but I ultimately decided I wanted to get this video out sooner rather than later. So I'm sorry if there's a little bit of an incongruency here, but hopefully we can still power through. Right. I wish people would be generally more accepting. Depending on the person's sexuality can be very fluid, and everybody forgets that. They try to put things into a box too often. Stop asking, where's straight pride? We don't have cemeteries for people who are alive. So one of the things that somebody else had said that this reminds me of, either in this set or the previous half of this video, but something that somebody had said was that during Pride Month, it can be especially hard. Maybe you're more open, maybe you're posting more about your sexuality, your expression, something like that, and you receive more backlash from it just for the fact that it's more public or something like that. And because more people are then vocal with their hate, it can be very difficult, and it can also be really maybe scary for some people, or can just be hard for somebody to be dealing with that. So one of the big commentaries that I've seen this month is this idea of straight pride. And we see this with a lot of different things, where whenever there is one group, the opposite group, for lack of a better term, will come and say something about how, why can't they be proud, or something like that. So I think the important commentary that we have to think about with this is, first of all, that nobody, I would arguably say, but I'll put quotes around it because I can't speak for everybody, experiences prejudice for being straight or for being cisgender, because we live in a very heteronormative culture. And if you look at something like that, you can see it in the way our media represents things. You can see the way in our dialogue has not fully shifted yet. So to be talking about the idea of gay pride, I read somebody saying that it's not so much about being prideful, but it's more about equality, and it's more about wanting rights and being visible and not feeling like you have to hide the person that you are. So to be mindful of that when we're talking about this idea of a straight pride, or any time, it is completely okay for you to be proud of the person you are and every aspect of that individual. But some people are not given a cultural space to do so. And if they are fighting for that space, we should be fighting with them. So, and I really like the idea of we don't have cemeteries for people who are alive. I remember what this one was. So one of the people that I asked these questions actually answered me and said that they don't need support and they could care more or less about what people have to say about how they live their life. So I asked them, and they apologized to me with this, and they said, I wish I had a better answer for you, but honestly, I don't, because I feel like I do this alone a lot of the time, and I feel like I've gotten to a place where I live very independently. So I answered and said, that's incredible though, and I think your perspective is important. And I asked them, so how did you get to that place? Because for some people, it's really hard to accept who we are for any reason, but it's a theme that I've heard amongst a couple of my LGBT plus friends, that it's really hard to recognize this about yourself and then come out to yourself and come out as your identity for yourself as well. So what they answered to that was, I accepted myself. I love myself. And I realized that I can't change whether I want to or not. Once I realized that, I was happier. When someone does or says something, I'd shrug it off. It's not worth getting mad or sad about. Just let it go and move on. I don't let something that someone says affect me, and I've lived independently, so I don't need the support. I could care less what people have to say about how I live my life. So I did read part of that before, but I thought that was really interesting to think about this idea of self-acceptance this month, and if you're ready to be at that place, to recognize what you're capable of doing for yourself as well. So thank you to the person who was willing to say to me, I don't have an answer to that question because this is my experience. Somebody said to support us on the daily and to continue what you are doing now. So to keep moving forward and to not shy away from maintaining your support. Something that I wish people would understand is that we didn't choose this and that we shouldn't be defined by preference or by sexuality. And I think that's something that I had mentioned earlier, that you are more than just this one piece of yourself or this one facet of your personality. I think that was the ice maker. All right, this was an interesting thing about Pride. So when you see images of Pride or when you see videos and stuff like that, one of the common things you see is very outlandish or very over the top, quote unquote. And people can do whatever they want in these settings, however they choose to celebrate. But this was an interesting commentary because it's talking about this idea that it's not just a time for the community to be obnoxiously gay. It's a time of solidarity for the community and allies to stand up to those defining them as a crime or a disgrace. So, and that's not to say that you shouldn't have fun at Pride and celebrate Pride and do all of those things that make you feel prideful, but to also recognize that Pride is more than a celebration. It's also a remembrance of so much and a time to recognize how far it's come, but also how far we still have to go. Stop making same-sex contact a joke or a sexual thing at all times. We talked, again, this is one that we talked a little bit about before with talking about how we've almost made it a caricature. We've almost made it into this idea that to be gay, or even with people that are having friends, where we turn it into a joke if a male and a male have contact, of how that is a joke, but it's not. For some people that is intimacy, and for some people that is a relationship. So that was one. It's not just about Pride Month. It's about having pride always. So after Mental Health Awareness Month, I posted something like that about how just because this month there might be more media attention and there might be more visibility, doesn't mean that you can't maintain that feeling all year round. And for some people, I'm sure that Pride Month is a great time to have space for expression and to have time to be around people where you can feel loved and accepted and celebrate the person that you are. But the flip side of that is that we want to remember that Pride Month isn't the only time that you are allowed your human rights and that you are allowed happiness and joy and acceptance. That is something that we should all be working for every single day. And that was an important reminder, I think, for anything else. We have days and times where we separate ourselves and allow ourselves to have the time and space for things. But to remember that at the end of this month, we don't have to cut it off. This person said they wish that people would stop staring when I'm with my partner because it makes me and the people around us very uncomfortable. It's another thing, it makes me sad to think that that's something that people have to face, that you can't just have a basic human experience without feeling that judgment. Be there and stand up for your friends. There's much more hate this month than normal. So it wasn't this one that said that. So to remember that sometimes with good, there is going to be bad, and that our friends might be facing something different this month. And if you are facing something, to remember that there are allies that are here for you, and we love you, and we support you, and we accept you. All right, so that is the end of the ones that were added on after. Thank you to everybody from the first half and the second half for reaching out. I know I probably said thank you 100 times in this video, but ultimately without your voice, I would be unable to create this video. So for those of you who are interested in being allies, I hope this video helps you to have some level of insight as to what people are facing in the community every day, not just Pride Month, and gives you an idea of how we can be more supportive as a culture and as individuals. In case I cut the editing a little weird, I am going to put in here one more time that one of the people did say that it's not just about posting and it's not just about videos and things like that. It's about making contributions to organizations. So for those of you that don't know, on the Mandy Margaret page, I have t-shirts that I sell, and I have stickers as well. And I donate 50% of the proceeds every single month, and I'm going to pick a different charity every month. 50% of all the proceeds from the Mandy Margaret t-shirt sales this month are going to be donated to the Trevor Project. Their link is in the description box below. Whether you just want to know more about them or if you need resources for yourself, please check that link and make sure that you go and support them. Also, if you have an ally story, or you have a story of the best thing that somebody has done for you, a way that you've been able to support your friend, or anything along those lines, I'd love to see them in the comments. I want to make sure that this is a really open conversation. Thank you so much for watching, and you could subscribe to our page by clicking the button below, or follow us on Facebook and Instagram for future videos like this. I'm planning on doing them on Mondays, but we'll see. And until then, I hope you guys have a wonderful day, night, whatever time it is where you are, and we'll talk soon.